In a small and forgotten Korean village, Lee-gu and Sun-young try to run a struggling garage by the side of the road. But let's be real, who even notices it? It's like it doesn't even exist. Their lack of clients means they're struggling to make ends meet, and Sun-young's already strained relationship with her family just gets worse. They never approved of Lee-gu and his low status, and now that she has to resort to making dolls just to earn a few cents, they hate him even more. And if things couldn't get any worse, a big construction company moves in, blocking the road and effectively sealing the garage's fate. One morning, a frustrated Lee-gu tries to ask the manager and his wife Uri for compensation. But after he bumps into their child, he's mistaken for a crazy person and taken away by security. Classic Lee-gu, always finding a way to make things worse for himself. As a result of this, Lee-gu finds himself back in the police station, where the officers are all too familiar with his antics. "Oh joy, it's Lee-gu again," one officer quips. Another cop in, reminding him that this is what he gets for refusing to join the local shop association, where members receive compensation. But wait, there's more. A juicy rumor about his father-in-law surfaces. Apparently, he's the owner of the shop that Lee-gu is renting for his business and is considering selling. On his way home, Lee-gu stumbles upon a man with a broken truck, who's ready to scrap it. But not so fast. Our handy hero points out that a simple valve change can keep the truck running for a few more years. Back at home, Lee-gu quizzes his wife, Sun-young, about the rumors he's heard, and she reluctantly admits that her dad is frustrated because they haven't been paying taxes. Lee-gu is livid that she's been keeping this from him, and before the argument can escalate, he makes a quick exit to clear his head. The grand plan: grab some beer and cigarettes from the local store. But since he can't afford both, so he settles for the cheapest brand of cigarettes. The struggle is real, he mutters to himself. The old lady in charge of the store seems to have a soft spot for Lee-gu. After all, he did drive her granddaughter to school once. As a token of appreciation, she gifts him a beer. Just as he's sipping on his brew and puffing on his cigarette outside the store, Lee-gu is suddenly accosted by Mr. Mun and his henchmen. They proceed to rough him up because of the pesky advice he had given to that truck driver. Who knew giving advice could be so dangerous? Turns out, Mr. Mun had his sights set on those scraps, and Lee-gu got in the way of his little business scheme. Later, over dinner, as Mr. Mun recounts the tale to his buddies, the group starts chattering inappropriately about Sun-young. Mr. Mun, still harboring feelings for Sun-young, storms out of the dinner in a huff. A few days later, Sun-young, all by herself, attends a family gathering. To no one's surprise, she's immediately attacked by her loving relatives. Lee-gu, ever the gentleman, decides to show up at the gathering, decked out in his best clothes and even managing to save up for a cake. But as soon as he overhears the insults being hurled his way, he beats a hasty retreat without even saying hello. On the way home, he drops the cake and, in his frustration, kicks it with anger instead of picking it up for dinner. Classy. Right then, Lee-gu sees a car stopped on the road with a flat tire and jumps into action, ready to save the day. He's taking advantage of the situation to charge a premium for his services. After all, who wouldn't want to pay extra for a roadside tire change in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by construction truck scraps? Enter Sun-young, arriving in a relative's car, who completely ignores Lee-gu. Of course, this leads to a heated argument between the two. Sun-young is tired of being stuck in the middle of her family and her husband. Who wouldn't be? In an attempt to calm things down, Lee-gu shows off his earnings from his tire-changing escapade. But even after a good night's sleep, he's still bothered by the events of the day. So, what does he do? Head back to the road, of course, and scatter scraps everywhere. And just like that, the cunning plan finally pays off. They wake up to a new client with a flat tire, and this time, Lee-gu decides to charge a reasonable price. But, as the hours pass by, he starts to worry because only one more client came by. So, he goes to check on the scraps, only to find out that they've all disappeared. Well, it turns out the construction trucks have been pushing the scraps away as they drive by, and their big, heavy tires just didn't get flat. What a bummer. But, being the determined fellow that he is, Lee-gu isn't ready to give up just yet. He stays up late, crafting even pointier scraps that he scatters on the road. And who pops up just in time to ruin the fun? Sun-young, of course. She disapproves of the idea, thinking it could cause an accident or even land Lee-gu in jail. But Lee-gu cleverly points out that all the people driving on this road are rich tourists who always seem to get out of trouble through bribes. Meaning, there's nothing wrong with scamming them, right? As the final touch on his argument, Lee-gu mentions wanting to save money to buy the shop from his father-in-law. Sun-young is skeptical at first, but as days pass and she sees the money rolling in, her initial skepticism slowly starts to melt. Finally, they're able to buy better food, and all thanks to this brilliant scam. One fateful morning, poor Uri's car suffers the misfortune of a flat tire. Enter Lee-gu, our tire-changing hero, and Sun-young, who offers Uri a drink and conversation to keep her entertained. But Uri's high and mighty attitude shines through as she looks down upon them because of their social status. When she finds out that Sun-young only makes 5 cents for every 10 dolls, she pities her and buys a doll for $10. How generous. Sun Young finally reaches her boiling point after being treated like a charity case. She rallies behind Yi-gu and helps him make a case for why he needs to charge Yi-rai so much money just for a tire change. From that moment on, she becomes a more supportive wife, bringing her husband drinks while he makes scraps, and even admits that she wishes she had the money to dress like Yi-rai. Late at night, Sun Young joins her husband on the road, holding the flashlight while he drops the scraps and offering her 2 cents on how to improve their plan. They even come up with the brilliant idea of sticking nails to the ground instead of having to return every night to replace the scraps. One evening, they're caught by a curious police officer who wonders what they're doing on the road at such an hour. But they quickly brush him off by pointing out that he isn't wearing his uniform and there's a girl with him and that he's using the police car for personal matters. How convenient. For the next few days, the couple decides to lay low. But hey, at least they have some cash now. So they decide to treat themselves. Yi-gu heads to the grocery store for some beer, and since he's feeling generous, he even gives the kid a ride on his scooter. Meanwhile, Sun Young, on the other hand, decides it's time for a little self-care and heads to the salon for a new hairdo. It's not long before Mr. Mun starts to get a little suspicious of the couple's sudden financial success. As night falls, the couple hit the road with a drill in their new plan, putting nails in the pavement. And it seems to be working. Yi-gu tells Sun Young she can buy all the dresses she wants, but he's keeping his focus on buying the shop. On the other side, Yi-rai discovers her worst nightmare. Her kid has been kidnapped. The police come to ask her about anyone who might hold a grudge against her, and she suddenly remembers the cute little doll she bought from the couple, Sun Young and Yi-gu. Accusations fly, and before you know it, she's pointing fingers and calling them scammers. The police chief tries to play it cool, but even he can't deny the evidence when one of his officers drops a little nugget of information about seeing the couple acting suspiciously on the road the other night. And just like that, the cops are hot on the trail. They quickly track down Yi-gu and arrest him while poor Sun Young is left to fend for herself. Meanwhile, back at the shop, the police are searching high and low for evidence. Sun Young's dad, the owner of the shop, is forced to play babysitter. But instead of being a loving and supportive father, he decides to heap insults on poor Yi-gu and tells Sun Young that she's only got herself to blame. But at the end of the day, when they don't have anything to show for it, no evidence, no charges, and no clues. So, a very embarrassed police chief has to give Yi-gu a ride home as an apology. At first, the chief tries to make small talk and act understanding, but it doesn't take long for him to turn on Yi-gu and tell him to stand up for himself and stop causing trouble for his men. The very next morning, Yi-gu picks up his tools and heads back to the road to try and make some money after all that time lost in police custody. Sun Young is in a bit of a panic about her husband and their secret, but she just can't seem to convince him to take a break. Meanwhile, Mr. Mun is still suspicious of Yi-gu and his possible wrongdoing. Since the police don't have any solid proof, Mr. Mun agrees with his cop brother to take turns keeping tabs on the duo. Oh boy, Mr. Mun is determined to catch Yi-gu in the act. So, when Sun Young goes out to place a nail in the road, Mr. Mun sees her in the act and finds the nail after she's left. Now he has to think of how to use this information to his advantage. With new nails placed, looks like the couple's business is booming again. They even treat themselves to a nice meal out. One afternoon, an elderly couple with a flat tire on their way to the hospital stops by and asks for a discount. But, being the shrewd businessman he has become, Yi-gu still charges them the full price. At the grocery store, Sun Young runs into Mr. Mun, who decides to blackmail her. He asks Sun Young to come to see him in private if she wants him to keep it a secret. Well, what a twat. The night falls and brings no peace to either of them. Yi-gu can't seem to shake off the guilt of overcharging that poor elderly couple, and now he's tormented by thoughts of his deceased parents. Meanwhile, Sun Young is lying wide awake, worrying about the possible consequences of their scam and what Mr. Mun might do. Sun Young asks a rhetorical question: what would we do if someone ever found out about our little scheme? To which Yi-gu replies without missing a beat, I'd quit before that person even thinks about calling the cops. The next day, Sun Young reflects on how much their plan has improved their lives and makes the toughest decision of her life. And so, Sun Young finds herself in the back seat of Mr. Mun's car, trading her dignity for his silence. After their transaction, Mr. Mun tells his brother to stop the surveillance on the garage couple. The act leaves Sun Young feeling dirty and used, so when she runs into some old friends who invite her to go shopping, she jumps at the chance to take her mind off things. After quite some time, Sun Young stumbles back home, sporting a brand new hairdo and an array of cute dresses. Yi-gu grumbles about the lack of home-cooked dinner, but Sun Young is too preoccupied to listen. She takes a shower, using a questionable cleaning product because nothing short of $1 million spa day can make her feel truly clean. It's not until Yi-gu falls asleep that Sun Young lets herself have a good, long cry. A few days later, a car crashes into a nearby rice paddy and Yi-gu rushes over to the scene before the police arrive. As he's removing the nails from the road, he spots a man sneaking out of the car. But as soon as the man realizes he's not alone, he takes off like a criminal. Yi-gu investigates the car and finds a kidnapped child inside. Soon enough, reporters and even the governor are flocking to the garage to interview Yi-gu, who has been transformed into a local hero overnight. Woohoo, fame and fortune at last. At the governor's office, we see Sun Young's dear old loving dad, trying to act all cute towards his son-in-law just to get close to the governor. But little does he know, Yi-gu already has a plan of his own. Having rescued a child and earning a hefty cash reward in the process, he tries to buy the garage from his father-in-law. Of course, Sun Young's dad tries to squeeze more money out of them by charging extra for the shop, but Yi-gu just can't resist getting passive-aggressive with his father-in-law. So, he signs the papers and shames him in front of the whole family, and before you know it, they're the proud owners of a shop and a shiny new car. Oh, the good life. Now that they're seen as trustworthy heroes, the business is booming and they're living the high life. Electric signs, fancy clothes, expensive restaurants. They even talk about moving to the big city one day. Back in town, poor Mr. Mun is left with fewer clients as Yi-gu takes over the car repair business. He tries to do some more blackmailing, but Sun Young wisely ignores his calls. From that day onwards, a mysterious car starts following Yi-gu wherever he goes. One day, while enjoying a beer at his usual spot, he hears a commotion and ends up at the hospital, only to find out that his nails have caused an accident and now a driver is hurt. So, Yi-gu is feeling guilty and trying to avoid everyone at the hospital when Mr. Mun shows up and tells him to get lost before he spills the beans about whose fault this is. Yi-gu, clearly shaken, hops in his car and drives home, bawling his eyes out because he realizes that Sun Young was always aware of Mr. Mun and his shady ways. Meanwhile, Sun Young is out in the middle of the road, adding more nails to the road like it's some sort of twisted art project. This finally causes Yi-gu to snap and he drags her back home, where he tries to destroy all the money she's been saving. Sun Young, in between sobs, tries to stop him and eventually confesses to all the things she had to do to keep Mr. Mun quiet. At this point, she says that since the damage is done, she might as well enjoy the money rather than let her sacrifices be in vain. Yi-gu, feeling the weight of guilt and pain, rushes to the road with the intention of removing the nails. But, boy oh boy, those nails have done their job perfectly and are now impossible to budge. So, the following morning, while Sun Young is busy twirling in her new frocks and admiring herself in the mirror, Yi-gu borrows a truck in a desperate attempt to bend the stubborn nails once and for all. Will this plan work? Only time will tell. That's it for today's video. If you've enjoyed this video, do subscribe to our channel. Until next time.